Welcome to the Consultants Way podcast, your go-to resource for all things professional services consulting. Brought to you by McMann and Ransford, a strategy consulting firm with over 30 years of experience helping B2B organizations achieve sustainable growth, and the Consultants Way, the leading comprehensive consultant development program. Hosted by Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, we share expert insights, firsthand experiences, and conversations with industry leaders on the topics that interest you most.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of their employer, company, or affiliated organizations.
Hey, welcome everybody. This is our what we like to call current events, or just things that interest us. Really, they may not be current; they could be. So there's a lot of interesting little studies that have come out recently. There's the MIT study on AI that I was reading. There's a LinkedIn study on what people are doing, how's it working, what's going on, what do we need, what are we investing in from a development point of view, and then there's just some data that seems incongruent on human development. So Anthony, start us off with your favorite of the three studies that we're going to talk about today.
I think it's the most interesting because it runs counter to so much else that you're hearing and seeing in the market. And again, I think we've talked about this before. A lot of the we think there's tons of potential and growth and efficiencies that'll come from AI across a whole bunch of different fields, and we're already seeing that. And I think all of us are using that on a regular basis to get some efficiencies. But sometimes when I see or hear some of the reports from not to pick on any companies, but from a Salesforce or from a Microsoft or from Anthropic, I think was another one that came out with something recently. I don't want to unintentionally throw somebody under the bus here, but and say, hey, 50% of all of our business and all of our work is getting done through AI now, or we've outsourced this entire function and we don't need this anymore, or I don't think my job as a leader or a senior leader of the business is going to exist because of all the advances we're already seeing in AI. I'm always a little bit hesitant, and I want to say, okay, well, what's their motivation for actually saying that? And all of the companies that always seem to say it are selling some form of AI or solution or agentic solution that, right, the more that they can create the momentum and the fear around, if I'm not doing something on this, I'm falling behind, the better off everything is for them. So that's the preponderance of data points that we see. But then this MIT study comes out, and the MIT study is the key point. Everybody was talking about it last week. This is late August now, is 95% of AI pilots failed to deliver a measurable ROI. So only 5% achieved rapid revenue acceleration was the key takeaway from that. So Dean, I kind of compared two different points there. One, all the data from the people that are intentionally or unintentionally marketing the value of AI versus this MIT study that said 300 enterprise AI pilot programs didn't see any results from it, or at least 95% of them. So what's your reaction to that?
Well, I think that, starting a long time ago, the world became a big investor in tech, and tech needs buzz and tech needs waves. So tech loves a thing to talk about and then align around it, and then force all of us either to feel like we're missing out, or to your point, we're missing out and there's a big opportunity, or we're missing out and getting left behind. And I think an awful lot of AI right now is in that category of buzz. It's a little easier with AI to get the buzz because everybody's experienced, or many people have experienced, some personal advantages to using an AI tool, right? And so they get themselves there. And I think it is interesting that people you always read about hyping changes in their business model from AI have AI products, right? Or sell AI. Yeah. Even the big consulting firms right now, a lot of departments are getting realigned under the AI umbrella just so they can count more revenue in AI, whether that group had anything to do with AI or not. So It's a typical wave problem. But I like the MIT study because in reality, it's very difficult for mid-size and big companies to change their business, right? And to purposely change it. Years ago, I was sitting with the CEO about their investment in tech, and this would have been a Fortune 50 company. And he said, I don't get it. We never stopped spending, but we've never fired anybody and saved any money. And if you look at the AI impact, it's going to be jobs. And if you just implement AI and it doesn't drive more revenue, right?
Yeah.
It's got to drive savings, and savings are going to be jobs. And I think they probably are uncomfortable with that, right? I don't think I don't think we're very smart about AI yet. Like, what do you to a point you and I made on a talk we had recently is start with what's your point? What are you trying to achieve? Or are you just playing around? Okay, you're just playing around. I get on some AI that's early this morning, like 6 a.m. I was on how can I make better visuals that look, like they came off of a movie script, right? And how would that help with some messaging? But did I solve anything? No. Did the tool I tried end up being?
Did you waste half an hour?
Yeah. But luckily it was before the day started. But yeah, so I think the MIT study is much more close to our reality than the hype right now. And whenever you get hype, you get these incredible valuations that are just fantastic. And I wish I had all that stock on that evaluation. I would get rid of it and take advantage of it, because valuations often come back to some normal mathematical model of, or how are you improving business and how can it be measured, right?
Yeah, real measurement of projected long-term earnings. That imagine that. Well, when we were and when I was at the TSIA conference earlier this year, their big point of the keynote speech was that they were seeing this huge surge of layoffs happening in anticipation or in hope of future savings. So we're going to invest in AI. We've been sold on this vision of doing it, or we've convinced ourselves that there's efficiencies to be gained. We lay off a bunch of people, and then we start to use that savings to fund our actual AI investments. And hopefully we'll make up for it fast enough that we don't miss the people that we just laid off. But your point there is like, hey, people are inherently resistant to change, right? I mean, how many big organizations have we worked with that, like, even getting the smallest process change or workflow, I mean, it's like it's moving the Titanic to get these people to turn and do things slightly differently. And so the adoption curve for AI is maybe just not what it was anticipated to be as well. That could be part of the problem. But compare your example of, hey, the executive you were talking to, we spend and spend and spend, and we never get the savings out of it. Compare that to this time around, where at least we're seeing, hey, there's a lot of layoffs that are being attributed to AI, but if we're not getting the results out of it, it seems like the exact opposite problem of what your prior experiences was, where hey, we're spending a bunch, but we're not laying anybody off, and we don't see any cost savings. And now we lay people off because we say we're going to get cost savings, and then all these things fail anyway. Like, can you?
Yeah. I think part of that might be the companies we're talking about. So if you look at the membership of TSIA, which is a fantastic organization, an awful lot of their members on a valuation curve journey, right? They're not a major corporation that runs a complex business yet. They're on, so if you're a business that is early and you're dealing with venture capital, or you're later and you're dealing with private equity, cost savings are, a bread and butter to them, and they love it. So I think that's a unique pressure that we may find that cohort lives in. Get rid of the people, right? And then see what happens in the back, which is the reverse of the major corporations who I was talking about, who have very difficulty getting rid of people just because they're not so much in touch with what happens every day, right? If you run a $30 billion company, it's tough. And there's a certain different kind of loyalty. Where in a tech firm that's on a high growth, I always think that they're not really in a business, they're in a stock play.
Yeah.
And if that stock play is the growth's not coming, those executives leave. But if you're in a major corporation, you've built your whole career there and you identify with your corporation. And we talk about you identify with your corporation maybe more than your function. So,
sure.
Yeah. But regardless of the two, we're not getting the outcomes. And that's MIT's point, and that's your point, is it's not fundamentally, we're investing, but we're not fundamentally getting anywhere.
Yeah, and I'll make one point on the TSA, and then I want to change topics a little bit, which is they do have a big group of their membership base, right? SAP and Oracle and Microsoft, and some of these that are these large companies that are here that have done significant layoffs as a part of and announced significant layoffs as a part of all of this stuff, and I think maybe in those cases, and we've talked about this a little bit before as well. Those were AI is a good excuse to make
that's all that
layoffs,
is. Yeah,
right. And so you might have some of that going on as well.
We did so much hiring and bloating during COVID that we're still cleaning up the organizations, right? We still are. So I think that's an excuse to clean house.
Yeah. So let's slightly pivot off of this into, okay, well, why isn't the AI investments working? And the MIT study cites a couple of different examples. One is we're using broad application LLMs to try and solve a problem that in the future SLMs or agentic models that are purpose built for a specific problem could actually solve. And then we talked about some of the change management of doing some of this stuff, but there's a topic that we care about a lot, which is you might be able to adopt all these things, these new technologies in there, but you don't actually have the missing skills that your team needs to actually replace it. So you've got a layer of managers, as an example, that were really good at some of the things that AI could automate for them, but they don't have the skills to step into other roles that can add more value and higher value. And this aligns a little bit with the LinkedIn study that you referenced earlier, which was the fastest growing areas of development right now through LinkedIn Learning is where I assume they got this data from, is interpersonal skills, presentation skills, problem solving skills, and people management. So all things that AI can't do. And so I feel like these things are related in some way. What are your reactions to that?
Yeah, I think that. So let me take this in two, because I want to come back to that particular study, because it piqued a thought in my mind for our consulting and PS clients. But AI is going to eat a lot of activities that people did, and it should. By the way, a lot of technical activities, a lot of customer service activities. It's going to, and it should, and that means I've got to add value. Right. And that's the point. I've got to add value. And how can I add value? Well, in a well-run AI implemented company, but that we don't have many yet, then it's going to be obvious that working with clients to get your customers successful, it's going to become more important. Interpersonal skills are going to be more rare. AI is not going to take over what you say in a meeting and the touch points. So, and that's particularly true when we talked about those. I just want to talk about PS and consulting a second. Those are generic, and if you were going to talk about that, let's pick on doctors. Doctors absolutely fit in the need for that, right? But getting doctors to act differently and the skills they need and the environment they're in is much different than a sales rep or a middle manager at a food company, right? And same thing with PS and consulting. They are much different in, their interpersonal skills are about motivating people to get outcomes, not an internal meeting where we want to, as an example, maybe we want to make sure everybody talks, right? We want to make sure everybody's heard. And that's a valuable skill, but it's not necessarily the skill that a consultant might apply to get an outcome out of a client and guide them and lead them, right? So it's great that we're investing that way. And I do think we're beginning to think as a a group of just massive employees in the U.S. at least, we're trying to think about how do we keep our value, build value, become more meaningful. And I think that's fuzzy still. I think that's very fuzzy.
I mean, I think there's an interesting parallel there to the MIT study, right? It's to have AI products work most effectively, they need to have a single purpose and be specific and mission built for that. They might have a bunch of other things that they're built upon, right? They're built upon the same language models, they're built upon whatever, but they're the actual right training of that particular tool that you're using should be very, very specific, very purpose built. Same thing with our people on our team, right? And it's the same way we should think about our team members, which is, look, and that's a topic like presentation skills or a topic like people management is universal. And so many, I mean, I can't think of a role that couldn't benefit from having an improvement of some of those skills, but presentation skills for consultants looks very different than presentation skills for a CEO looks very different than presentation skills from a professor, right? Those are all very different things, but it's still called presentation skills. And so I think, right, you'll probably, as you see a gravitation towards more and more purpose-built AI tools, I think this concept of kind of generic skill development will also go away because people's roles are going to be very specific and unique as well. And so even if the topic is the same, the principles underneath that might get more and more role specific over time.
I think that's absolutely true. I got a demo recently of a purpose-built AI tool to help in doing maintenance on aircraft engines, and very
you don't seem like
very
the target market for that.
Hey, low be it from me to, but once you saw
when
it
invited
work,
to a demo, you show up with your learning cap on.
The power of the AI tool to help diagnose, discuss, interact, but very limited to that topic. How to get other engineers to understand what you're saying the problem is, how to provide data, but very purpose built and therefore impactful, right? And I think that was just a very interesting example of that. And of course, we've got a purpose built for how do consultants get better, right? And that's our belief that it's unique and different than everything else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If we, to be fair, right? If we didn't believe that was the case, then we were probably doing the wrong thing with our time.
All right. Well, listen. These are, let's just recap a little bit here. So one, we're migrating to better skills. We may not be doing it well, but we're beginning to do that. I like the thought of a specific AI built for specific situations will make the difference and win the races. And I love that MIT kind of demystified, like everything else in this world, just because you have a wave and you make it important, it's got to get practical. We got to make changes. Business has got to be improved, or we're just spending money.
Nope, I agree. So we'll keep our eye on where everything heads, and hopefully that number ticks down from 95% of them failing to 90 and beyond sooner and sooner. Because
90 is our goal.
Hey, look, 10% success rate. They what is it?
That's a double. That's a double success rate.
85% of all strategic transformations organizations go through fails. So if we can just get to that number, then now we've got strategic transformations that are failing at 85% clip, and AI transformations, and if you pair them together, then you don't have a chance. But I do think the technology will continue to evolve, as will all of our learnings around it. I think people are throwing money at the problem, trying to figure out we just can't be left behind on some of this, and hoping their organization will figure it out. And now enough learning has taken place that future investments will be much more wisely spent. So we'll keep an eye on it. All right. If you enjoyed this discussion and want to hear more like it, check us out on our YouTube channel, where we have the library of all of these conversations, plus our 10-minute clips, plus roundtable discussions with with PS Executives. You can also find us on Apple and Spotify podcasts. So go there, download, like, subscribe. And then if you want to connect with Dean or I, you can do that on our LinkedIn pages. And you can also email us at podcast@consultantsway.com if you ever want to get a hold of us that way. And we look forward to hearing from you all and seeing you next time. So thanks.